What's up, guys? Hey, it's me, Sean Astrom. In today's super dope tutorial, I'm going to show you how we can use this fantastic new software called Gaea to generate a really cool landscape, bring it into Cinema 4D, and render it with Corona Renderer. Let's have a look at that right now. Hey guys, so first thing I'm going to do is show you guys the Quad Spinner website. And you can head over here and check out this new software called Gaea and learn all about it here. It's really cool software, and I'm definitely no expert, but I've been playing around with it for the last few months here. It's officially available now, so definitely make sure and check this out. So here we are inside of Gaea, and I'm spinning the camera around right now by holding down the Alt key and just orbiting around with my mouse, but I'm actually using a Wacom tablet. And then you can zoom in the viewport with the, well, I'm using the spinny wheel thing on the Wacom tablet, and alternatively you could use the wheel on the mouse. And you can also use the WASD keys like in a game to kind of pan around, which is actually what I've been doing. Seems to work pretty well with the Wacom tablet configuration. So that's a real quick intro on how to navigate the viewport, kind of important. But when you open up Gaea, you're actually presented with a, I'm going to go ahead and restart it here so we can have a look at that. So I'm going to launch the Gaea, and you're presented with this sort of how would you like to use Gaea, and I'd recommend just going with the graph method as opposed to the layers, because it just gives you kind of full control of everything. So if you just select this guy, we get a create terrain, and it's going to start us off with a generic window here, and I'm going to just scale this guy down so that we are within the capture window. So just bear with me here. I knew if I restarted it, it would resize everything, so just give me a second here to get this to scale. Sorry guys, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm going to just make this nice and perfect. And sorry for the flickering. I'm sure that has something to do with my screen capturing software. So anyway, here we are inside of Gaea. I'm navigating around. I'm going to zoom in. So this is just a randomly generated landscape here that it's created. Now another important command, if you hold down the middle mouse button, you can pan around in the node view here, or the graph view I believe they call it, and then I'm zooming in and out again with my mouse wheel, or in my case with the Wacom tablet, the spinny wheel thing. But instead of just starting with this new kind of default scene, I'm just going to go ahead and delete these guys out of here. We'll ask you if you want to do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to hop into my little tutorial folder here. We're going to create like an alien landscape here. So I'm going to call this Alien Landscape version 3. I've been playing around a little bit with this. And yeah, so we're still seeing the old setup here, but if we just go ahead, and I'm going to slide this over so we can get a good look at all of our nodes. So these are kind of all of the primitive / adjustments, filters, erosion nodes, and everything that consists of Gaea kind of right here to the left hand screen. Now I'm not going to go into great detail, but enough to kind of show you guys kind of a basic workflow here inside of Gaea. So the first thing one might do is grab ourselves a Perlin noise. So I'm just going to plop that or drag it into the viewport here, and then let me zoom out a little bit so we can get a better view of that. I'm still kind of getting my head around navigating the viewport. Coming from Cinema 4D, it's always a learning curve when you have to kind of relearn a different navigation style. But so if we bring in this Perlin noise, you can see here what we're getting. But it's not just like a basic purlin. It's actually a very advanced looking purlin. There's some different modes here, complex, simple. If I switch it to simple, you kind of get maybe more what you're probably used to seeing with just a generic purlin noise. But I really do like this complex mode. And then we can just hop in here and change the seed, and just like that, we are getting ourselves a different landscape here. So we can also play around with the scale a little bit, which is nice. I'm going to scale that up a little. And, whatever. I think that's looking pretty good. So something we might do next is we might grab, let's see here, a auto level. Well, actually, I like to use this bias and gain node. So if we plug this guy into here, this is going to give us some nice control on, kind of the height and intensity of our landscape here. So that looks pretty good. And I may bring in, let's see here, let's bring in some dunes, and you'll see that's going to generate something completely different here. Let's just change the seed for fun. That looks cool. And yeah, guys, this software is just so great. I've used a lot of different terrain generation tools, and I would definitely say that Gaea is kind of by far the easiest and seems to be the most powerful in a lot of ways. Their erosion nodes are just amazing, but it's very easy to use, which is nice. So with this dunes node and the purlin here, I want to mix these. So I'm actually going to use a combine node. So we'll bring this in, and I'll plug this guy into input 1, and then I'll take this guy and plug it into input 2. And just like that, you can see we're kind of getting a blending between these two nodes. Now I can adjust the ratio here, which is obviously going to affect, if I go to 100%, that's going to be our purlin here, and then if I go to 0, that's going to be the dunes there. So I kind of like to use this add mode, or even I think sometimes the max mode works really well. So these blending modes are kind of like similar to what you get in Photoshop and all that good stuff. So let's just say we're happy with that. This isn't going to be the most amazing looking landscape, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys a cool little introduction into this awesome software. Now, something that we could do next here is we could go into our filters here, and there's this really cool one called swirl. And if I plug this into here, you can kind of see we're getting this cool kind of swirling effect. And I'm going to actually scale this down, and then let's just see here what we get here. Maybe 2. There's this whirl node. Let's see what we get from this guy. And this is what's so cool about these, is we can just keep combining nodes to get more and more unique things. I think the node I was actually thinking of is this whirl node. So I'm going to delete this, and you can do that by just selecting the node and just hitting the delete key, and it's going to say, are you sure you want to do that? And we'll replug that in here. And so this is kind of what I was going for. I just really think this has kind of a cool alien look here. And let's change the seed for fun. And let's change the scale a little bit, or the amount of whirls. And that's looking pretty cool. So this looks decent, nothing special, but the real power comes with all the erosion nodes. So without going too deep into all of these, I'm going to just, well, let's use a stratify. So this is going to kind of create some terracing effects, which is awesome, and looks really good. And I might do, after this, well, let me see here. Let's play with the strength a little bit and see what we're getting here. That's a little too strong. If I uncheck filtered, don't see much of a difference there. You know what? For all intents and purposes, I think this actually looks pretty good. So after this guy, I'm going to bring in an erosion node, and this is where a lot of the strength of this software comes in. The erosion node is just awesome. Just like that, you can see kind of what we're getting here. But I want to actually blur this somehow. So I think if I go up here, there is a blur node. So I'm going to just bring this guy in here, and we're going to set the power like super low, like just a very subtle blur. I was trying to double click this to see if I could change the value here. It doesn't look like I can, but maybe they'll add that capability in a future update. Okay, I like that better. That looks much nicer. Now you guys might be thinking, well, the detail is not very great, and we can change that by going up here to the top left and just changing the resolution here. I've had pretty good luck with 1K and 2K. I don't know if I would work at a resolution of 4K. Might be kind of slow to work with. But let's let all these things calculate here. And yeah, guys, I hope you can see now much more detail, and this is looking, pretty dang cool if for a very minimal amount of work. So yeah, so let's say we are completely happy with that. We are done with this guy in terms of the shape of everything. So next thing we might want to do is start kind of coloring this. So to do that, we are gonna maybe bring in a sat maps, and this is a awesome little utility that gives you like thousands of, or I should say probably hundreds of different gradients that were created, and I believe some of them were actually captured, from real satellite data, which is really cool. And if we just take the output here, not the the output, and plug this into the input here, you'll immediately see we kind of get this awesome coloration of everything based on the elevation. Now, to preview the elevation with the sat maps, what we need to do is right click here on the node, and I will say with the Wacom tablet it's a little finicky. It doesn't seem to work quite as good as a mouse, but maybe they're working on that. But if I do pin for color, then if I hop over to my sat maps here, you can see now the color has been mapped to my actual height information. So that's looking really cool. Now if I wanted to, let's say I want to take two of these guys, so I'll bring in another one, and I don't know, we'll pick something else random here, and we'll take this output here, and so same output, different map, so we can kind of see here the different results we're getting there. We can actually blend these together with a mixer node, and it seems like this mixer node works with the color information as opposed to the combine node, which works with the height information. So, without spending too much time on this, if we just do a little blend here, like, let's just say that we are completely happy with that, and we are good to go. So to get these maps outside of Gaea, it's really an awesome, simple workflow. All we have to do is right-click on these guys and just say Mark for Export, or you can also hit the F3 key, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to select this, hit the F3, Mark for Export. Same with this guy. I want to export this color map, and that's pretty much all you have to do. So if I go over to the Build command up here, this is going to give me a nice little dialog here where I can select the resolution, and I'm going to do 4K in order to keep this nice and speedy. And I might even point out that you can go all the way up to 32K. I think that's kind of experimental right now, so I think, but I've done a successful 16K render, and 8K works great. But for now, we'll just do 4K, and I'm going to set this to OpenEXR. And for build destination, you can put in, of course, your own location here, but there's this kind of nice preset here where you can do file location, file name, builds, timestamp. So that's just going to put it where your saved file is in its own little folder, which is nice. So we can see here with the build manager kind of list here, we got erosion, which is this node here that I selected, and then we have the mixer here, which is the color, and yeah, we got output. And by default, the erosion kind of comes with some other maps which we might want, like wear, deposit, and flow. And yeah, guys, so I'm just going to hit the start build, and I'm probably going to pause the video and let this do its thing, and then we'll hop back in here in just a second. Okay, guys, so those finished up here, and you can see it just popped up a window here, a Windows Explorer window, just to kind of show, okay, here's your alien landscape, v3 builds, and then there's a nice timestamp here, and we got all of our files right inside of here. So this is great. And yeah, guys, so it's as simple as that. So I'm going to close this out, save it one more time, and we'll hide this guy. And I'm going to hop into my favorite 3D software, Cinema 4D, and let's just see how we can set this up real quickly in Corona and light it and all that good stuff. So I'm going to bring in a plane object here, turn on garage shading, and let's crank up the segments to 512 by 512. And let's set the size of this to 6,000 by 6,000. This is going to be our terrain. And let's bring in a displacer, such a wonderful deformer. Plop that in there. And if we go into the shading here, we'll load up that map. So let's grab the erosion here, which is our height. And let's bring this in here. And let's see, we get a little preview there. Now under the object tab, I'm going to crank up the height to something like 4,000. Voila, look at that. Now, in order for this to be a nice preview to work with Corona, I'm gonna name this to ref GL, and my displacer, I'm going to set this to intensity, and you'll see it shot up here. But we want to go to the shading tab again and actually set this to, sorry, the color profile we want to set to sRGB. And then this is what Corona is going to do at render time. So if we also go back into the displacer here and go to the mapping tab here, if we just uncheck tile, that will get rid of those little walls there. That's looking pretty sweet. And I'm going to turn off garage shading. And yeah, guys, so that's what we're going to get, but even with more detail at render time here by setting up a quick Corona material. So let's bring this over here. Let's name it landscape, and let's load in that same erosion map, and let's turn on displacement. Plug this guy into here, and neat little trick here, I'm going to go back to my deformer, and under the height value here, let's go set driven, go to my material, displacement, max level, set driven absolute, and sorry, set driver, set driven is what I meant to say there. So under the displacer, we want this value to drive this value, which it now does. So if I make a little change here, that should update on my material. Get rid of that guy. And yeah, guys, so that's looking pretty sweet. So if I bring in a Corona Sun, set the color to white, let's lower the intensity to something quite low, like, I don't know, 0.025. Do a little save. Let's fire up the interactive render and see what we get here. So yeah, guys, just like that, we're getting something nice. But this is actually our ref geometry. So I'm going to copy this, and we'll create the render version. And we don't need this in here, so we'll drag this material onto the render version here, and let's hide the ref GL, hide it at render time, view it in the viewport here, and then let's reveal this guy at render time by setting up our little traffic lights like so. Now, for those of you who might be new to Cinema, if you select your object and go to the Basic tab, these guys are controlling the visible in editor and visible in renderer right here. So if I make a change here, you can see that switch to off and on there. So that's just, these are just shortcuts to these options here on all of your objects with the Basic tab. So that's looking good. Okay, now let's fire this up again and see. We should get a much more detailed landscape. There we go. So that is the actual material, and yeah, so that's looking sweet. And next, let's bring in our color, which is this mixer file here. Let's plug that into the diffuse, and you can see that we're getting some nice color there. Now, I think out of Gaea, it's actually doing an sRGB color profile, but since this is an EXR, it's defaulting to linear. So what I like to do actually to have a little more control over this is bring in a filter node and plug this guy in here and adjust the gamma here. So I can set this here, but if I wanted it just a little bit lighter, I can crank that up, and I think something like that looks a little better. So I'm going to stop that. This is looking pretty great. So next thing I'm going to do is bring in an HDRI, and I'm going to use one of my new Galaxy Nebula maps that I've been working on for a little while here. And if you guys haven't checked those out, definitely head on over to my site, have a look here, these Galaxy Nebula HDRI maps. Yeah, I had a ton of fun making these things, guys, and I don't know, I think they turn out pretty cool. They have stars sort of embedded in them, so they're kind of just like an automatic space map solution right within Cinema. So if I just go into my content browser, I have them loaded up here. I'm going to just bring in this one here, the Galaxy Nebula 3, and I'm going to drag this guy right into my texture slot here, and let's let that load up. Now this is a 14K map, guys, so it's crazy high resolution, and 32-bit dynamic range is insane. And we'll plop this onto a sky object. And let's see here. Let's find a nice camera angle. Bring in a Corona camera. Let's set the much wider angle of view here. And let's see here. I'm going to crank up my preview resolution on the actual HDRI. That looks pretty good. And let's fire this up and see what we get here. It's going to take a second to recalculate that displacement. And dang, guys, that's looking pretty cool. So the cool thing about this is these maps do provide quite a bit of illumination on my geometry. So if I turn off the star or the sun here, you can see kind of the illumination we're getting. And if I drag this guy into my node editor, I can bring in a filter shader here, and again just play with the gamma a little bit on this map. That will kind of increase the contrast. And then if I go to the emission tab here and crank up the emission, we should get a really nice look here. So yeah, guys, so these maps, that's the only thing illuminating the scene right here. And yeah, these just turned out really cool, I think. Was trying to create something different that I haven't really seen myself. I've actually been doing a lot of space art lately for my client work, and I just thought that something like this would be super handy to create scenes like this without having to, spend a ton of time making these things from scratch every time. So yeah, so let's just crank this up a little bit more. It's looking pretty good. Then we'll turn back on my sun, and that's way too bright still. And I just want something very subtle just to kind of create a little bit of shadow there and whatnot. Hard shadow, at least. So that looks cool. And yeah, guys, like, so with Gaea and these maps, it's kind of silly easy to create cool scenes like this. So let's just go ahead and do a high quality render here in the picture viewer, a little higher resolution, and see kind of what we get. Now, obviously, you could take a little more time and get in here and map in those flow maps that Gaea creates and really get detailed with the material for the landscape, and maybe scatter some alien plants all over the place. So we'll go ahead and let this render a little longer. 30 seconds seems pretty fine. Let's add some bloom and glare. Threshold, lower this quite a bit. That looks pretty good. It's just too easy, guys. So yeah, so here we have our alien landscape created with Gaea and rendered with Corona inside of Cinema 4D. Thanks again for checking this one out, guys. We'll see you soon.